Brussels in April 2011. At the Action Days, Free Our Seeds. 3 days of events dedicated to the seeds of traditional and local varieties. Discussions, demonstrations, and a European seed exchange, where small-scale farmers and heritage seed breeders freely exchange or sell self-produced seeds. It's been the free seed exchange along the history that has created such a richness and diversity of agricultural varieties in Europe and worldwide. In the Western world, though, this practice has been almost forgotten. And who's to blame? The industrial agriculture of the last decades on the one hand, and the European seed legislation, at least in the eyes of the organizers of the Action Days. Obviously, agriculture and seed production go hand in hand. Even more, the one wouldn't exist without the other. Nevertheless, the European Union separated the Siamese twins, governing them through 2 different DGs, agriculture and health and consumers. As a consequence, the ongoing reform of the European seed legislation runs in the opposite direction to the agricultural reform, thus undermining the efforts of Dacian Cioloș to support small-scale, local and environmental-friendly farming. Next day in the European Quarter of Brussels, political institutions, multinational seed companies, professional associations and lobby groups, all next to each other, and the colorful crowd of seed liberators in front of them.
A little explanation why we are stopping here during this demonstration. This is the office of the lobby group European Seed Association, ESA. So basically what ESA is lobbying for is for more intellectual property for seeds, which means more patents, stronger plant breeders' rights. In other words, to combat farm-saved seeds, so to prevent farmers to regrow and replant their own seeds. 2 examples of companies that are member of the ESA. One is Monsanto. They used to have an office with a big name on the Avenue ter Vuren. Now you will not even see any small placard anymore that they are there, but they're still there, they're still lobbying. And one of the main missions of them is to get approval for Roundup Ready soy and maize to be grown in Europe. You probably have heard the impacts of the cultivation of Roundup Ready soy, which is resistant to the herbicide Roundup in Argentina, Paraguay, Brazil. Well, that's what they want to grow here as well. Especially active on this is Romania. Romania's agriculture minister is an ex-Monsanto employee, so you can guess where he's coming from. This is what we call revolving doors, moving from industry to public positions and back again, and thereby doing a great lobby, without doubt.
Later, some more protesting in front of the headquarters of another chemical and seed giant, Bayer, completed with some bone-chilling information about their military past and agricultural present. And then the moment of the day, a petition for a completely different European seed legislation, ready to be handed over to 3 members of the European Parliament.
Alors, voilà, ce que nous revendiquons, c'est très simple. Nous revendiquons le droit des paysannes, des paysans, des jardiniers et des jardinières de produire leurs propres semences, de les multiplier et de les échanger et de les vendre. Libérer les semences, 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 libérer les semences. je vais suivre par quelque chose qui va vous plaire. L'interdiction des OGM en agriculture. Le dernier point, et je crois que c'est la conséquence, si tous les premiers points sont réalisés, eh bien, nous arriverons à une agriculture qui a besoin de beaucoup moins d'énergie, qui gaspille beaucoup moins de pétrole, qui pollue beaucoup moins nos sols et nos aliments. Eh bien, c'est un changement de la politique agricole en tout.
After hearing all these speeches, there was only one conclusion left. Either were the seed protesters altogether liars, naive or credulous, or they had just given me the last piece to complete a puzzle. So, I had to know more about seed legislation in Europe. And here are some facts and a short analysis. First, yes, there is something like seed legislation at all. Second, it had been created 100 years ago in several states to protect farmers from seed producers. Third, according to European legislation, only certified seeds can be marketed. But most traditional and local varieties don't meet the high criteria of distinctness, uniformity and stability. Therefore, this criteria privilege the industrial seeds on the market. Fourth, it's true that heritage seeds don't need to fulfill this high criteria, but they are not allowed to be marketed outside the region of origin, and their market share is reduced to a certain percentage. Fifth, Europe may get something like a seed police to check the origin of the seeds used by the farmers. Sixth, yes, there is an ongoing reform of the seed legislation, but it's supposed to be made only in close cooperation with the seed industry. Seventh, even the strict DUS examinations should be moved from the fields into the laboratories, and therefore from the farmers to the industry, from the level of description to the level of DNA analysis. Eighth, the controversial European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, should be involved as well in the certification process. Ninth, the new seed legislation may be exported to other countries and regions, together with its consequences. Full stop. It seemed that these demonstrators weren't exaggerating at all, and this raises a legitimate, even crucial question. Why such a discriminatory seed law in Europe? And here's the possible answer. It seemed to me that the apparent success story of GMOs wasn't based on the quality of their products, but mainly on political decisions. Decisions to their favor and decisions that discriminate the competitors. And there is a competition of GMO, industrial and peasant seeds. Even if it's an indirect competition of the three types of agriculture, each of them based on its specific seeds. And the more peasants replant their own seeds, being traditional or even industrial seed, the less seed corporations can sell to them. As a consequence, a restrictive and even punishing seed law may prevent more farmers to regrow their own seeds, thus increasing the sales of the seed corporations. In other words, the seed legislation decides about the distribution of power between peasants and seed companies. Power for the peasants means food sovereignty and independence from the corporations. Power for the corporations means control over the peasants. This scheme applies as well for the power distribution between countries or world regions. But this is not all, since there's one more scenario, a much more thrilling one. Just imagine the following. Imagine that one day seed companies have to admit the poor success of enhancing transgenic plants, for several reasons, like the lack of real control of the gene once introduced into the genome. Such a confession could mark the beginning of the end of the GMO industry. And once that farmers don't want to buy their products anymore, the only way to secure their profits is to claim plant variety rights according to the seed legislation. For this purpose, they need the European seed inspection or seed police and a certification process based on DNA analysis, which allows for identifying certified varieties in the field or even in products. and both are proposals for the future European seed legislation. And now imagine that several big GMO seed producers have already confessed this fundamental failure. Here is one of them. The frequency of success of enhancing the transgenic plant is low due to a number of factors, including the low predictability of the effects of a specific gene, the lack of highly predictable control of the gene once introduced into the genome, and other undesirable effects. Patent application by Monsanto Technology LLC, St. Louis, Missouri. And now imagine we would have had a free and fair seed legislation over the last decades. These activists would not protest in front of ESA, but would be a member of the association. There wouldn't be only a few seed exchanges, but thousands of them, every week. The reform of the European agricultural policy would be a real success, or not even necessary. Not only Willy Schuster would have a great life, but his neighbors and farmer colleagues as well. Dragos Tima would be the CEO of Monsanto in St. Louis, the biggest charity in the world to fight the real causes of hunger. Professor Aurel Maxim would still be the same. Dr. Valerio Tabara as well, but not as a Minister of Agriculture. Mrs. Cristina Chonga would love her job as an expert for organic farming at the Romanian Development Agency in Washington, D.C. Mr. Nicolae Hristia would have never tried to block Percy Schmeister's press conference in Bucharest. Instead, he would be a volunteer on his farm in Canada. There would be few black sheep in politics. Genes would just make proteins, keeping the life alive. Many environmentalists and filmmakers all over the world would dedicate their time to many other problems, but not to GMOs. And somewhere in the far east of Romania, the European flags and values would be in a better shape, maybe.